Hello, now we are going to talk a little bit about object testing. So we already look at unit testing, where I test each method. So it's the smaller unit to test. In the case of object orientation, is the method. And the question now is, do I need to test these methods together in the context of the class, okay, or an object of the class? And the problem here is how to do it and whether we need to do it, okay? So the idea is that, let's try to test sequences of methods, okay? But the main distinction, thing that we need to decide or to see in the class is whether it is a model class or a non-model class. Why? What is the difference? Basically, the model classes have a particular behavior. The behavior depends on the state. So usually model classes are complex objects that have a life cycle, define a life cycle. So you go through different steps in the life cycle. An example of non-model classes is basically just all the methods can be invoked in any situation. So if you think about sequences of methods, so any sequence is possible, which actually these will be like testing each method in isolation for the possible states of the class, okay, for the invocation of this method. For instance, an example is a list. If you want to test a list, you just test each method for the cases where, so when the list is empty, the list is full, but you don't really need to test sequences of methods in the list. But when you move to model classes, it's relevant to identify the sequences and exercise an object of this class to go through these sequences, okay? And each one of the sequences that you consider relevant is something that should be tested, okay? So, which sequence should be tested? The best way to do it, and the way you usually do it, you define a state machine, okay? You define a state machine, and then you use and the state machine describes the life cycle of the object. And then what you do, you infer from the state machine a set of sequences, okay? The best way, I'm going to give an example. I don't have the state machine here, but I have already some sequences to test. So I'm going to pick an object called student. And I say that the first state is application. And from application can move to not admitted or admitted. And admitted students can be registered and quit, or register and alumni. And what you're going to do is basically you just, for instance, pick this first sequence and create a test case where you move the object from its creation, go through the application state to not admitted. Okay? And you test that everything is okay as expected, and you invoke the methods such that guarantee that you test these particular sequence in the life cycle of an object. And the same for these, and just stop in admitted, okay? And then the one that goes to quit and alumni. Usually these are called epipasses, okay? But if you want to do a more rigorous testing, you can even try to check that there are passes that cannot occur. For instance, that a student cannot go from application to not admitted and then to registered. So you try to create a test case that verifies that this is not possible, okay? So in that way, you create your test cases, which means that, so you test an object, you test its methods in isolation, and if this object is a complex model object, you may come out with a lot of test cases. So the first step in the composition of tests is object testing, and the focus is on model objects. Okay, good work.